In the summer of 2019, a wildlife biologist named Marcus Henley was tracking wolf migration patterns near the southwestern edge of Yellowstone when his GPS malfunctioned and sent him down a ridge he had never mapped before. He scrambled through dense lodgepole pine for nearly 3 hours before the trees opened into a narrow valley floor about 2 miles long, hidden between two sheer basalt walls so steep that no satellite image had ever captured the valley floor with clarity. What he found there in the next 4 hours would take archaeologists 2 more years to begin explaining. Not 1, not 5, but 24 separate pieces of physical evidence suggesting that someone had lived in, used, and possibly worshipped in that valley long before anyone had any reason to believe human beings reached that part of North America. If you have ever felt that official history leaves too many gaps unfilled, stay with me, because by the time we reach number 1 on this list, you are going to be genuinely unsettled. Make sure you subscribe right now so you never miss a discovery like this one. Number 24 is where we begin. And it starts with something so simple that most people would have walked right past it without a second thought. Number 24. Smooth stones arranged in a precise north-south line near the valley entrance. When Henley first spotted them, he thought they were just glacial deposits, the kind of thing you see all over Wyoming. But he noticed something that stopped him cold. Every single stone was basalt, which is common enough in this region, but each one had been shaped on at least 2 sides by something abrasive and deliberate. They were not chipped like arrowheads. They were smoothed, the way a stone gets when someone holds it against a grinding surface for hours. There were 17 of them in a line stretching nearly 40 feet, each one placed with its flattest side facing upward, and each spaced roughly 2.5 feet from the next. Geologists who later examined photographs said the spacing was far too consistent to be accidental. The question of who placed them there and when is still open. Number 23. A shallow depression in the valley floor measuring roughly 20 feet in diameter, almost perfectly circular, ringed by a low berm of compacted earth and small stones. From ground level, it looks like nothing. From a drone photograph taken during the 2021 survey expedition, it is unmistakably circular and clearly constructed rather than natural. The soil inside the depression tested significantly different from soil just outside the ring, with lower organic matter and higher mineral content consistent with repeated burning over a long period of time. This was a fire pit, and a large one, used not once, but many times across what geochemists estimated could be centuries of intermittent occupation. Number 22. Carved channel lines in a flat section of basalt bedrock near a small seasonal creek. The channels are shallow, only about 1 centimeter deep, but they run in a branching pattern that closely resembles irrigation channels used by ancient agricultural societies in the American Southwest. The creek runs for only about 6 weeks per year when snowmelt is at its peak, but the channels would have directed that water efficiently across a 50-foot section of the valley floor. Someone understood water management in a place where conventional archaeology says no one was farming or settling. Number 21. A cache of burned animal bones found 2 feet below surface level in the southeastern corner of the valley. The bone assemblage included bison, elk, rabbit, and a species of deer that paleontologists say has not existed in this region for at least 10,000 years. The burning pattern on the bones was deliberate, and several of the larger bison bones had been split lengthwise, which is a technique used specifically to extract marrow for storage or processing. The radiocarbon dates came back complicated, which is itself significant, and which we will return to later in this video. Number 20. 3 separate grinding stones, each clearly manufactured rather than natural, found within 30 feet of each other near the center of the valley. Grinding stones are among the most universal tools in human history, used everywhere from Mexico to the Middle East to process grain, seeds, pigments, and medicines. The unusual part here is that 2 of the 3 stones still contained microscopic residue in their grinding surfaces. Analysis identified traces of 2 plants, one of which is a species of wild grass that no longer grows in this part of Wyoming, and one of which is a root plant that modern indigenous communities in the Great Plains still use medicinally. Someone was grinding plant material in this valley, and they knew enough about the landscape to find plants that have since vanished from the region entirely. Number 19. A vertical groove pattern carved into the basalt face of the northern wall, starting at about head height and extending upward for roughly 12 feet. The grooves are not random. They follow a consistent angular pattern that some researchers have compared to tally marks, while others see a more complex notation system. One scholar from the University of Wyoming who examined high-resolution photographs suggested the pattern might represent a lunar calendar, with groupings of lines that correspond to lunar phases across approximately a 14-month cycle. Whether or not that interpretation holds up to scrutiny, the deliberate nature of the carving is beyond doubt. Someone spent considerable time making those marks, and they made them with a hard, fine-pointed tool on some of the hardest rock in the valley. If you are finding this as fascinating as I am, drop a comment below telling me which piece of evidence so far surprises you most. We still have a lot of ground to cover. Number 18. A shaped wooden post, partially preserved, found buried at a 45-degree angle in the soil near the southern wall. Wood almost never survives in this climate over long periods, which makes this find extraordinary. The post was roughly 6 feet long before its broken end, and it had been shaped deliberately, narrowed at one end into a point, and smoothed along its length with what appeared to be a stone blade. The wood was identified as whitebark pine, which grows at high elevation and would have been available in the mountains surrounding the valley. Preservation this good over such an extended period suggests the post was buried intentionally in soil conditions that favored preservation, or that it was buried far more recently than the other evidence suggests, which raises its own set of difficult questions. Number 17. A small pile of red ochre pigment found in a sheltered crack in the western wall, packed into the crack with what appeared to be dried plant fiber used as a stopper or seal. Red ochre is iron oxide, and it has been used by human cultures on every inhabited continent for tens of thousands of years, primarily as a pigment for body decoration, art, and ritual. Finding it stored and sealed in a crack in this remote valley suggests it was a valued commodity worth protecting, possibly brought from a significant distance since the local geology does not produce high-quality ochre. The fiber used to seal it was analyzed and found to be from a species of sedge grass consistent with species found several hundred miles to the south. Number 16. Tool flakes. Hundreds of them, scattered across an area of about 15 square feet near the valley's widest point. When a stone tool is knapped, meaning shaped by striking flakes off a core stone, the waste flakes accumulate where the work was done. Finding a dense scatter of flakes means finding a workshop, a place where someone sat for hours or days making tools. The flakes here came from two types of stone, one a local chert, and one an obsidian whose chemical signature has been traced to a volcanic source near what is now craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho, more than 200 miles away. Long-distance obsidian trade is well documented among ancient North American cultures. This valley was apparently part of that trade network. Number 15. A double row of small post holes found during careful excavation of a rectangular area of unusually compacted soil near the valley's center. Post holes are exactly what they sound like. The ghost impressions left in soil when wooden posts rot away over centuries or millennia. These holes formed two parallel rows about 8 feet apart and extending for roughly 20 feet, which is the classic signature of a rectangular structure, a house or storage building built with upright wooden posts. Whatever stood there is long gone, but the soil inside the rectangle contained charcoal, burned seeds, and small bone fragments that were not present in the surrounding soil. Someone built a structure here, lived or worked inside it, and left behind the microscopic record of their daily life. Number 14. A smooth, flat stone tablet, roughly the size of a hardback book, found face down in the soil near the post hole structure. When it was turned over, the upper surface showed a series of shallow, incised lines forming a pattern that several researchers described independently as a map. There is a long curve that could represent the valley wall. There are two circles that could represent the fire pit and the post hole structure. There is a series of dots that might indicate the stone line at the valley entrance. And there is a symbol in one corner, a simple cross within a circle, that appears in rock art traditions across a remarkable range of ancient cultures in both North America and Asia. Whether this stone is genuinely a map or a coincidental arrangement of marks is fiercely debated. What is not debated is that the incisions are deliberate and were made with considerable care. Number 13. Ash layers. When sediment cores were extracted from the valley floor at 3 different points, each core showed the same pattern: multiple distinct layers of ash buried at different depths, alternating with natural sediment. This means multiple episodes of fire activity separated by periods of non-use, followed by more activity, going back to depths that suggested a timeline far older than anyone expected. Ash layer analysis is one of the most reliable methods archaeologists use to establish occupation timelines, and these layers told a story of a place that was returned to again and again across a very long stretch of time. This was not a one-time camp. This was a place that people knew about, remembered, and came back to. Number 12. A carefully constructed stone wall segment, about 15 feet long and 4 feet high, built against the eastern face of the valley wall in a way that would have created a sheltered alcove. The wall is dry stacked, meaning no mortar was used, but it is built with skill, with larger stones forming the outer face and smaller stones filling the interior for stability. This technique appears in ancient construction traditions across the Great Plains and the Intermountain West. The alcove it creates faces southwest, which would have maximized afternoon sun exposure during winter months and provided a sheltered microclimate significantly warmer than the open valley floor. Whoever built it understood architecture and comfort in a cold environment. Number 11. Animal teeth, modified. A collection of 15 carnivore teeth, mostly from wolves and coyotes, each with a small hole drilled through the root end. Drilled animal teeth are among the most universal personal ornaments in human prehistory. They are worn as necklaces, sewn onto clothing, attached to ritual objects, and used as currency or gifts. The drilling here was done from both sides of the root, meeting in the middle, which is a technique that requires patience and a fine-pointed hard tool. 15 teeth, all drilled in the same manner, suggests either a personal collection or a small manufactured set. The wolves and coyotes they came from are species still present in Yellowstone today. Number 10. Charcoal writing. On a low, overhanging section of the southern wall, partially hidden behind a boulder that had apparently fallen at some point after the marks were made, there are 17 distinct marks applied in charcoal, each one between 2 and 6 inches across. Charcoal marks on cave walls and rock shelters are found at ancient sites around the world, and they range from simple tally marks to complex representational art. These marks have not been fully interpreted, but they are consistent in application, made with a pigment stick of compressed charcoal rather than smeared by hand, and they appear to have been made in at least 3 separate sessions based on the subtle differences in charcoal composition. Someone came back to this wall more than once with something to record. Number 9. A cache of preserved food material, tucked into a deep crack in the northern wall, sealed with flat stones placed in a deliberate overlapping pattern. Researchers found a compressed mass of organic material that had partially carbonized over time. Analysis identified it as a mixture of dried meat, rendered fat, and what appeared to be dried berries, a combination consistent with pemmican, the high-calorie, long-preservation food prepared and used by indigenous peoples across North America for survival in harsh conditions. This was a food cache, deliberately hidden in a location that would have been difficult to find, unless you knew exactly where to look. Whoever hid it intended to come back for it. Whether they did is something we will never know. Number 8. Geometric engravings on a flat boulder in the valley's widest section. Unlike the tally marks on the northern wall or the possible map on the stone tablet, these engravings are purely geometric, consisting of interlocking diamond shapes, parallel zigzag lines, and a series of concentric squares that cover roughly 2 square feet of the boulder's upper surface. Geometric rock art is found at ancient sites across the American West and is often associated with altered states of consciousness or cosmological symbolism in the interpretive frameworks used by researchers. The engravings on this boulder show signs of recarving, meaning original lines that were deepened or extended at a later date, which again points to a site that was visited across multiple generations. Number 7. Human hair. This discovery caused more debate than almost any other item on this list. In the soil near the fire pit, mixed with charcoal and ash at a depth consistent with the older occupation layers, researchers recovered several strands of human hair in a remarkable state of preservation. Hair survives poorly in most archaeological contexts, but the specific soil chemistry of this valley floor, influenced by the geothermal activity nearby, created conditions that allowed organic preservation. The hair was dark, straight, and of a diameter consistent with indigenous North American populations. DNA analysis is still ongoing as of the most recent published update. If results confirm ancient occupation, this valley will need to be entirely reclassified in the regional archaeological record. Leave a comment right now if you think official archaeology is too slow to update its models when new evidence comes in. I read every single comment. Number 6. Fiber cordage. A twisted length of plant fiber cord, roughly 2 feet long, found coiled inside a hollow in the valley wall at a height of about 3 feet from the floor. The cord is made from plant fibers twisted in a Z-spin pattern, which is a specific directional twist with strong cultural associations in ancient North American textile traditions. The fibers were identified as coming from a species of dogbane, a plant used extensively for cordage by numerous indigenous cultures throughout the continent. The cord shows no fraying or deterioration at either end that would suggest it was cut from a longer piece. It was made whole and placed whole into that hollow, which suggests deliberate storage or deposition rather than accidental loss. Number 5. An engraved bone tool, roughly 8 inches long, made from a large mammal leg bone, almost certainly bison based on size and density. The tool was shaped at one end into a point and had been polished to a high smoothness from use. Along its shaft, someone had engraved a series of small animal figures, 4-legged forms that researchers tentatively identified as bison, elk, and a third animal that may be a bear or large cat. Engraved bone tools with figurative decoration are extremely rare in North American archaeology and are associated with sites of considerable age and cultural sophistication. The level of craftsmanship on this piece suggests a maker who had not only technical skill, but an artistic tradition to draw on. Number 4. A stone circle, separate from and smaller than the fire pit depression, located near the valley's western wall. This circle is roughly 6 feet in diameter and constructed from upright stones rather than flat ones, each stone about 8 to 12 inches tall, and placed close enough to its neighbors that the circle is nearly unbroken. Circles of upright stones appear in archaeological contexts associated with everything from astronomical observation to ritual performance to grave marking. No human remains were found inside or immediately beneath this circle, but the soil within it contained significantly elevated levels of phosphate, a chemical marker associated with organic decomposition of animal or human tissue. Something once lay inside that circle and has since completely disappeared into the soil. Number 3. Painted figures on the ceiling of a shallow overhang in the valley's northeastern corner. This discovery was made almost by accident when a member of the 2021 survey team lay down to rest in the shade of the overhang and looked up. The ceiling is only about 6 feet above the floor at its highest point, and the paintings are small, rendered in red ochre, and a black pigment identified as manganese dioxide, which is the same black pigment used at famous painted cave sites in Europe and at ancient rock art sites throughout the American Southwest. The figures include what appear to be human forms with raised arms, a large animal that may be a bison or bear, and a series of horizontal lines that some researchers interpret as landscape features, such as a river or a ridge. The style has no precise parallel in the regional rock art database, which means either it represents a tradition not yet documented in this area, or it is genuinely older than anything currently cataloged. Number 2. An astronomical alignment. During the summer solstice of 2022, a researcher who had studied the valley's orientation made a calculated prediction and returned to observe it. At dawn on the solstice, the first light of the sun entering the valley through a natural gap in the eastern wall struck the flat stone tablet found near the post hole structure with a precision that illuminated only the upper surface of that stone and nothing else for a period of approximately 11 minutes. Replicating this observation with solar geometry software confirmed that the effect would have been identical 10,000 years ago. The tablet's position relative to the gap is not random. It was placed there to catch that light. Whether the tablet itself is that old is a separate question, but the intention encoded in its placement speaks to a level of astronomical knowledge and long-term cultural memory that is difficult to reconcile with conventional accounts of who was in this region and when. And now, number 1. The radiocarbon dates. When the bone assemblage from the burned cache, the charcoal from the ash layers, the wooden post, and the food cache were all submitted to separate laboratories for radiocarbon analysis, researchers expected to see dates in the range of 2,000 to 5,000 years before present, which would have been remarkable enough for this region. What they got instead was a range of results that sparked immediate and ongoing controversy. The wooden post dated to approximately 800 years before present, consistent with late prehistoric occupation. The charcoal from the upper ash layers dated to between 1,500 and 3,000 years ago. The charcoal from the deepest ash layers came back at 11,000 to 12,000 years before present. And the bone assemblage, the one containing remains of a deer species not seen in this region for 10,000 years, dated to between 9,000 and 10,500 years before present. These dates are internally consistent with each other in a way that suggests they are not errors. They describe a site occupied across an enormous span of time, returning to again and again across thousands of years of human presence in a valley that no one in mainstream archaeology had any reason to look for. The deer bones alone are enough to rewrite the regional fauna record for the Holocene. The deep ash layers are enough to push human presence in this specific corridor of Wyoming back by several thousand years beyond current accepted dates. And the painted ceiling, which has not yet been dated because the dating process would require sampling the pigment and risk damaging the art, may ultimately prove to be the oldest evidence of all. A team from 3 universities submitted a joint paper on this site in late 2024. As of this recording, it is under peer review. The valley has been given a temporary designation in the Regional Archaeological Registry. Its exact location has not been made public, and access is restricted while the investigation continues. Marcus Henley, the biologist whose GPS malfunction led him there, has been listed as a co-discoverer on the academic paper. He told an interviewer that when he first walked into that valley, before he even registered what he was looking at, he felt a quality of stillness that he had never experienced anywhere else in 30 years of fieldwork. He described it as the feeling of a place that remembers being watched. 24 pieces of evidence, and the investigation is nowhere near finished. The valley near Yellowstone is holding its secrets carefully, surrendering them one at a time, and every answer is producing 3 more questions. If this kind of story matters to you, subscribe right now so you are here for the next one. And tell me in the comments below, which of these 24 pieces of evidence do you think is the most important, and what do you think this valley was really used for? I will be reading every single response, and the best theories are going in the next video. Do not let this channel be the best kept secret on YouTube. Share this with someone who needs to know that official history is always the beginning of the story, never the end.